I was raised largely by my grandmother when I was young, and we would go to Pike Place Market where they used to have a stall, and my grandfather was known as the Potato Man, not knowing at age 4 or 5 that it used to be their place of business, but later on understanding what was taken away from families because of the incarceration. You know, I think it colors your whole life. I mean, my grandparents lost property and lost their livelihood.
It's shocking to see your father, who's always the strong one in the family, break down, and to learn that this happened and still not quite understand it all because you're just seeing it unfold in front of you. I mean, you see it from the emotional standpoint, but you didn't really understand the whole gravity of, the gravity of the history and everything, and what it did to the whole community. And what it does still to a third generation, It didn't disappear. It hasn't disappeared. History doesn't just disappear, because it still goes on with the people who are living.
Both sides of my family were affected significantly. I know my mother was saying that's the last time her family was together. They picked up and left within the 3 days that they had. They didn't have a home to come back to.
And I thought, wouldn't they have learned from their first experience? But history repeats itself, and it feels like it's repeating itself again.
I think the thing that, is resurrected in recent years is this fear-mongering, which is, what was behind the incarceration in the first place. And to see it sort of on the rise again in terms of our politics and our communities getting along, it's kind of a scary thing to see.
Haven't we learned from the past experience that, here we are in 2016 and we're still talking about putting people into camps?
That was very scary to know that just could easily happen today, because people think, oh, do you think it'll happen again? Because that's the question you always ask. And I think most people today would say, yes, it probably could.
Pearl Harbor was bombed in December of 1941. It was against a background of hostility against Japanese immigrants. Soon thereafter, there came a call from politicians, government leaders, the popular press, civic organizations to remove all Japanese from the West Coast, regardless of whether they were citizens or not. There was language about how Japanese gardeners were poisoning food, and language about how Japanese farmers were growing their crops in the shape of arrows to point to airports. And here we see the same toxic combination of ignorance and fear. People don't understand Islam. They don't understand people who are from another country.
Now for the top story tonight. Why do so many millions of Muslims hate the USA?
Because they're violent, because they threaten us, and they are threatening. They bring that desert stuff to our world. I said the same thing Friday night. We don't threaten each other, we sue each other. That's the sign of civilized people.
And that's combining with a fear about 9/11, about terrorism, and then casting all Muslims and persons of Middle Eastern descent as foreign, as potential saboteurs, as potential terrorists.
They make big sweeping characterizations. The posters of the Japanese with the teeth and the bug eyes and, the devil, sort of yellow peril and that kind of thing, of what was back then. And now the notion of terrorist. I mean, what is a terrorist? Who is a terrorist? And that's pretty frightening, because anybody they can point their finger at and say is a terrorist. And I think that's what's happening now too, is they're tapping into a fear, just as they did during World War II. I still remember when 9/11 happened that day. I was in Berkeley, California, and a friend of mine called, and she said, "Did you hear the news?" And I said, "Yeah, isn't it terrible?" And she said, "We got to go get them." People are just saying, "Yeah, we got to get them," without thinking, wait, who is them? What is the reason for this? And what is my responsibility as a thinking person in this country, a citizen, supposed to do?
It's scary because it's so easy to when it comes down to race and color, you could be swayed in many ways, and I think it's so obvious what's happening.
There's a sadness that maybe people are forgetting. They're forgetting the experience that my parents and my grandparents went through. I know a lot of Japanese Americans feel like the most important legacy is that people not let it happen again.
We need to stay constantly vigilant and aware of each other and the experiences.
To have compassion doesn't mean you have to have only had direct connection. And I think that's where it comes into the identification of who we are as a people, all of us. I don't have to have stubbed my toe to know that someone that just stubbed their toe hurts. And it's the same thing with this, because we're all in this together.
The younger ones are more outspoken than we were when we were their age. So I do see hope. I do see hope.
And I have to say, there is a difference this time. You do see people being upset with Trump. And I think it's the younger people. You see the younger people protesting that. And it gives me pleasure, because back then, the ACLU didn't even stand up for them.
The important thing, absolutely important thing to remember, is that each person, each one of us, has to take a stand against it.